Hey, it's Chris. Foundations of Metropolis. Arcane Wonders sent this to me. And I said, hey, is this a more accessible version of Foundations of Rome that you've been clamoring for? Outstandingly and overwhelmingly, the answer to this is yes. What do you need to know? Where are things at? What's different? What's not different? Where do things lie now that you can actually afford it? Let's go. Premise is straightforward, right? This is Foundations of Rome in a nutshell. There's not a whole lot of difference, except the fact that, well, now I have a little cardboard situation instead of the blinged out, deluxeified, wallet busting, shelf not fitting, passive aggressive real estate agent playing style of game here with this edition. As you can see in the overhead view here, we have just, well, what you've got going on here as well. The inset allows you to just kind of do this with it, right? That's dangerous. And then you just play pretty much the same way you would with the original. 2 to 4 players, tile laying, deed buying, building, planning, or civ planning, depending on how you want to do this, on 3 rounds, most victory points at the end of 3 wins, right? The whole concept is relatively straightforward. Doesn't take a rocket scientist, thankfully, because otherwise I'd probably be out of the running to learn how to play this game. All you're doing on a turn-by-turn basis is you have over on the left side your deeds that you can buy for your various prices, as you can see right above here, sort of tilted, right? 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 10. It does the whole buy one, slide them down, draw a new one mechanism, and there you go. When you buy it though, so if I buy E3, I take one of my markers off my board, I put it on E3 to mark that that one is mine forever and ever, amen, period, end of game situation. Just be aware more than anything else. And you just throw it in your little pile to the side to make sure that you can always go back and tell if that one is mine or if I'm missing anything, or just whatever minutia or errata could come up and you can screw up when you take stuff off and put stuff on, like I do all the time. Second action is, well, you know, you need money to buy these over here. So you get your passive income from the city. They just pay you. So you get 5 gold plus whatever is out there in terms of these, because all of these tiles have either population on them or dollars on them. And so when these are out there and you take the passive income action, well, you get 2 plus that 5 in this case. So you've got 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 3 there. Just lots of ways to get extra money when you're doing that passive income phase of things as a whole. The most important part of this is, well, the third action, where you're looking at where I have a tile, I'm taking the size that corresponds to that and swapping it out and putting this back in my tray. I have to do that at times because you'll notice that my markers here, all 8 of them are only 8, which means if I have all of them out here smorgasbord, I cannot buy any more deeds until I fill them up. And they might be out there in arrangements that are really where I want them to be. They might be in suboptimal arrangements. I don't want to put a whole bunch of 1s out there. You know, I just showed you the board here that has your anything from 2s to 3s to 4s in a couple different varieties. And so you want to get the bigger ones, better ones out there, but you have this random draft from 3 random piles that you're slowly just replacing, sliding down, if I can actually do it, and rinsing and repeating, and you go and do that for 3 rounds. You go until all of the deed cards are bought every single round, and then you score up the scoring objectives, and we'll get to that in a second. But that's the game in a nutshell. The only other nuance to this game is that in case you have one of these all of a sudden get put there, or one of these all of a sudden get put there, you can overlay one of your tiles with a bigger tile. So I can't overlay it with a separate 1. I can't replace it with just a different 1 if the circumstances are different there. But I could, say, replace it if I really wanted to with a 2. Or I could subsequently come later along and subsequently do a 3 in that sense. And you're wondering why you might do that, apart from getting some of those 1s back, and so you can get as much out on the board in terms of the endgame scoring that I just mentioned. Because you're going to be having a couple different flavors of endgame scoring. Again, very, very familiar if you've looked at this before. Population scoring, that's the tracker over here. So what you do is you have your little population tracker down here. You count how many people are on all those tiles that you've laid down on the city there. You score how many that is, and then you see where everyone else is at, and then whoever's in first place gets how many population they have plus a round bonus. So round 1 it's like 4, round 2 it's 7, and round 3 it's 10. So in this case, you know, if I'm in the lead with purple and I've got 8 population, I get a +4 bonus at the end of the round, so I get 12 victory points. I'd move my 12 up to here, and then this is where it comes in, is the second place person only gets the victory points of the first place person's population. So yellow has 6 population, but they're going to get 8 victory points because that's the person in front of them. So they would get 8 victory points there, and so on and so forth. If there was a third player, they would get second player's population and for points, and so on and so forth. The last element of things that you're going to be having is you're going to be having these buildings, which are going to have your, well, civic side of things, right? Basically adjacency. These buildings, depending on, how many they touch and what value they get, are going to earn you certain other points. For example, some of these, at the top here, the statue earns me 2 points for every civic building it's touching. The market earns me 1 victory point for every $ value it's touching. And then, you've got other ones that will do any type of building, for example. And you've got even some of the bigger buildings that will just give you victory points, as well, down in the lower left-hand corner here, as well as the refilling at the end of the round, which gives you additional money when you get to reset and go to your new pile of deed cards over here on the side. That's it. That's the game in a nutshell. Do you like it? Do you want to like it? Should you like it? How does it compare, right? I mean, it's basically Foundations of Rome, right? Except it's affordable now. So for people like me that said, I just cannot do that size and that amount of money for a game as much as I may like it, that's who this is going to appeal to. And does it do a good job? Absolutely fantastic. Thematically speaking, I mean, it's fine. Mechanistically, you know what? Again, it's not doing anything polyomino-wise tile laying that you haven't, seen before in a passive-aggressive real estate agent, investor, civ building style of things in the first place, right? At the same time, a lot of tile laying games become more mechanical and just very perfunctory. And they don't always have the it factor, And this one, it just has the it factor. It has the fun factor. I see why people really like it. It's just, it's just fun. Picking these deeds up, trying to, make sure that, on this map that all the purple ones are sprinkled around here, and I'm trying to figure out which ones are going to be better for me, and, maybe try and figure out which ones might not be as good for them. But truth be told, you have the ability to have some, non-direct player interaction in that sense. But it's also not going to be the main dynamic because you're going to be more worried about what you can get down rather than hate drafting what other people may want in the first place, because otherwise it's going to completely backfire on you. So if you're worried about that as a negative interaction style, I would say don't as much. I'd also say that, as you can see on the board here in front of me, we've got grayed out pieces here, and you can see that 8s are for the 8x8, which is what this grid becomes with the 3 players, and then 9x9 for the 4 players. And there's actually not just this side. If you want to just make it easy and clean so you don't have to even look at it, on the flip side of this board, it just has the 7x7, so you can do it really easily that way. That's the game in a nutshell. The only big con that I can see in this game, for me personally, is especially at the lower player counts, especially 2, maybe a little bit 3, but more so especially with 2, is that the end of round 1 and 2 can slag a little bit. When there's a couple of these undesirable deeds out there that you're looking at and going, nah, I don't really want to do it. You might be tempted more just to income once or twice and get as many of the other tiles as you can, again, which is also more of a strategic than anything else, because you're not really forced into the end game, right? You're not really forced to buy these until you just can't. So you're really going to want to do that, which can lengthen at the lower counts when you have more availability of this, because again, at the 2-player counts, there's almost still too much availability in that sense. And at the 3 or 4, it's going to mitigate that just because everyone is going to be vying for every literal square inch that they can get, right? See what I did that pun there? So that's going to be the issue more than anything else. But if you're playing at 3 or 4, it won't be much, or if any, an issue whatsoever. The main other criticism that I have of this game more than anything else is actually the insert. The insert has a little bit of trouble putting all this stuff away because you have your individual colored tiles here, and it raises the lid. And I'm going to have to probably take out the insert that's in there that, nicely puts all the pieces in little squares and, again, puts little cards in little card slots. That's the only way I'm actually going to get this box lid to close and to be sustainable, because you can't put them in there in this tray, even though it's dual layered here. As I was saying, you can do this with it. It's not going to stay in there the second you tip your board game like me and you do it that way, right? It's just going to do that. So that's probably the only other main criticism. And again, that's probably not terribly different than most board games nowadays, as the insert really isn't always meant to be more for storage than it is for transport. Say what you will, right? So do I like it? Yeah. Is it going to stay in my collection right now? Yeah, it is, actually. I'm really surprised by this one. I wasn't expecting it to be, because, I looked at this almost as I was playing it and after I played it, Tiny Towns, right? Reminds me of Tiny Towns. Tiny Towns is an amazing, mechanically manipulative spatial arrangement game, and it makes you feel so clever. At the same time, it just is becoming unfun because of how thinky it has to be if you're playing with any sort of competitive group. Like, it just loses the I'm having fun. I'm just trying to purely optimize more than anything else. And you can do some of that here, especially in the round 3 when you're trying to overlay and you're trying to, you know, get the adjacency, because, you know, I didn't mention that, you know, with these tiles, when they get the adjacency points, you know, this is a 1 star for every person population that's adjacent to this, up, down, left, right. They don't even have to be your building. So, you may have a little bit of that where people are trying to swap out maybe this tile or the ones around this tile, so they're putting money tiles next to my that has the population, and vice versa. But again, it's going to be more potentially what can I do to benefit me rather than what can I do to kind of screw you. And if you are kind of like me, sometimes that's fun too. I'd like to can you mess with other people, but at the same time, sometimes it's just nice not to have to worry about that whatsoever. So that is Foundations of Metropolis. Again, I've heard comments and I would like to see it too, but it's coming, right? The biggest concern people have on the forums right now is, oh, is it going to have expansions? It doesn't have the variability. One, there's plenty of, especially at the higher player counts, you're not going to have to worry about, depth of replayability. It's going to give you completely different games with the completely different deeds because, you get 6 assigned to you at the beginning that you lay your pieces out on, and you can even, change this to a draft style if you really want to have control. So that's going to give you plenty right there. But you know what, folks, if this does halfway bonkers that Foundations of Rome did on crowdfunding at retail, you're going to see the expansions, period, right? You will. If it makes you money, you're going to see them. And so if this makes money, you'll see them. So I wouldn't worry about it or fret your little hairs, any y'all. So there you go. Foundations Metropolis. Very happy with this one. Lives up to the hype. Very much so. And you know what? Truth be told, that doesn't always happen nowadays. So I'm very pleased. Have a great freaking fantastic day. Stay classy. See you around.